Hello, John. Nice to see you.
Well, nice to see you.
Let's deal with the elephant in the room first of all. Okay. Do you have a favourite Doctor Who story?
Well, yes, actually. Thank you for asking that. It's got to be the demons.
Yeah.
The demons. Well, I mean, it was about black magic. We had lady witches, we had men witches.
Wallocks.
No, honestly, we had men witches. And they were there. And it was all about black magic, and I loved it because they took Benton out of his uniform and made me a bit of a tough geezer.
So I remember you went through the ringer a bit in that one. You had a fight in the church.
Yeah, well, I'll be totally honest with you. I was born Salisbury, 1941, Christmas Eve, 1941, Christmas Eve, midnight. And I never thought I'd amount to anything. When my father came back from the war, like so many kids of my age, we were just beaten, ignored, and shoved in a room. It was sad, it was mean, it was hard, and it was bloody miserable. And I've noticed a lot of young people here with their fathers. I love it when I see dads with their sons and their daughters sharing this wonderful thing called science fiction. And the fact that the world outside thinks we're mad, that's their problem. The time I've seen, the happiest people I've seen are you people when you can relax and be yourselves and dress up. What else is life about apart from changing? You've got to change life, you know? And so I don't call people fans. Fan is short for fanatic. I think you're enthusiasts. The enthusiasm that you've had. Now, I've been in this business 55 years now, and just to let you know, a little show off, although I don't show off. I had a phone call 2 nights ago from New York City. Most of you don't know, but I lived in Hollywood for 21 years, from 1989 to 2010, and basically disliked every bloody day of it. Hollywood is not a place to be happy, to be anything other than American, and to be an American must be the most awful thing in the world. Are there any Americans here? Oh no. You're not an American. Some Americans are really fantastic. I mean, you know, and but it's Texans I don't like the most. It's Texans, and the reason I don't like Texans is because my great-great-grandfather was killed at the Battle of the Alamo in Texas. Well, he wasn't actually in the battle. He'd gone over to complain about the noise. But that's why I don't like Texans. Yeah, so the demons was a fabulous story.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem. No problem. Did want to talk about the Android invasion?
Oh, I know nothing about that. Was I in it?
Yes. According to Wikipedia, you were.
Oh, never believe Wikipedia.
Oh, I know the one. Was
Yes.
it with Tom Baker?
Yes.
Okay.
Mark's last appearance of Sergeant Benson.
Yes.
And we wanted to talk about that because it was filmed just up the road from here. So I wondered, have you been to Didcot recently? Is this the first time you've been there for years?
No. Well, I've only just got back from America. I mean, I've been all, you do travel a lot, and I never get to these smaller places now.
No.
I mean, I live in Salisbury now. It took me 4 trains to get here. I don't know whether you know that. I mean, Salisbury bases at Reading Didcot, and then we touched the Horn of Africa. I don't know how the hell we got around there. And I had trouble at the station. I got to the railway station this morning. I said to the bloke, "A return, please." He said, "Where to?" I said, "We're back here, you silly bugger." I mean, what's the point? Hey, I've got a quick question for you. What happens if you're scared half to death twice? It's a problem, isn't it? Yeah, just turn it.
Excellent. I mean, in all seriousness, do you look back now at 17, your role in Doctor Who, and you think, is there a single story you look at and you think, yeah, that's the Benton I wanted to be. That's where I wanted to be with the character. That's the one.
I've never ever been asked that in 50 years.
Really?
And I'm not going to answer it. No. Let me very briefly. I told you I was born in a bad way. I had a bad childhood, and when I was 9, I had a blood disease. When polio, there's not many people my age in the room, but back in 1950, hang on, I was born 41, I was 10 years old, 1951, poliomyelitis struck England like a lightning strike out of heaven. And 4 kids in my road went down with poliomyelitis, lost their legs and their arms. I missed it, but I ended up with a blood disease which gave me blood spots. It was awful. So I had no education for 6 years, from the age of 9 to the age of 14. When I became a young man of 15, and I've been talking to these young men, it's very difficult to talk to young men in this day and age with all this paedophile crap going on, and every man that's decent is now tarred with the same brush. I'm disgusted with what's happened to the moral code of these countries. Someone needs to do something. People need slapping. We need to get back to slapping these bastards that are making it bad for everybody. I hate them for it. Anyway, the other thing I thought yesterday is when the Queen dies, how upset we're going to be. I don't want my Queen to die. I suddenly realised how much I love her. Because I've known a lot of old queens in my time, and she's got to be the best. Bloke asked me if I was gay the other day. I said, gay? I'm not even bloody happy. Yeah, what was the question?
I can't remember.
The unweighted.
Yes.
The truth is, when you're an actor, you're either good or you're not. You're either confident or you're not. I was neither of those things. Sadly, I was a mess. Back in those days, I got migraine very badly out of fear and anxiety. And then along came two men simultaneously that changed my life irrevocably. It took me a year to learn that word. Irrevocably. John Pertwee and Roger Delgado. They saw that I was a tortured soul. They saw that I broke easily. John Pertwee thinks I have a butterfly soul. I help everybody, I do charity, I cry and break for people, but I can be destroyed in a word. And it's quite sad really, because I don't know. You try to be strong, and yet you can be broken quite easily. So what happened is, these men could see I was nervous, they could see I was worried, they could see that I went into the toilet and cried, and so did Nick Courtney when Tom Baker took over Doctor Who. So miserable was the set when he took over that it was like being ill. It was like cancer eating away. All the work I'd done in the 5 years with John Pertwee and Pat Tran, Mr. Baker came along, and I'm sure he had his own reasons, but he just ruined it, and I couldn't wait to get out of acting. So then I fell in love with a lady named Jennifer, who came from Milwaukee in America. I fell deeply in love for the first time in my life. And the special effects man from Star Trek, who happened to be a friend of mine in Hollywood, he built the Borg ship in Star Wars, I get them mixed up. And he saw me perform. I did the Emmys. I stood in for Steve Martin, the movie star, and I hosted the Emmys and made a name for myself. People like Billy Crystal phoned me up, and nearly got the Oscars, which would have been wonderful. But I made my mark in Hollywood, and I'm quite pleased. So what happened is, when you get broken easily, you don't know which way to go. It's either panic, tears, or suicide. And I bet there's at least 3 people in this audience that have contemplated all 3 of those. I know I have, and I know I wouldn't commit suicide, but it definitely is a thing that you think about when you're broken. So, along came these men, they took me aside, and they actually bothered to tell me what was going on. They actually bothered to teach me. And they said, you're a wonderful man, John, you make us laugh. The one thing I do is make people laugh, and I'm very happy about that. I went home the other night, and my wife was crying, and I said, why are you crying? She said, I'm homesick. I said, but this is your home. She said, I know, and I'm bloody sick of it. No. So, I went to my doctor last week. He said, you're sick. I said, I want a second opinion. He said, you're ugly as well. No. So, the moral of my story is that these 2 men came along and made me what I am today. I mean, obviously I had to do a lot myself, but the footprint I've left behind as Sergeant Benton and John Levene, I can now stand here or sit here and say I'm absolutely thrilled with the man I've become. And a couple of people that have just come into my life that I never would have dreamed have become my closest friends. I'm sure you've all seen Braveheart, one of the great movies of our time, and when you think what we did to the Scots, it's a wonder they don't spit at us every day. We were really bad, the English, back in those days. But James Cosmo called me up the other day. We spent 5 days together in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't think I've ever met a man that impressed me so much. And we were there, and the one thing I must tell you, I do love being a celebrity, but not all the time. It's not all it's cracked up to be. But we were going through Atlanta, Georgia. Now, you know, white Americans hate black Americans with such a vengeance. I don't know how America is staying above water. I hated living there, and I'm so glad to be out of it. They've got some big trouble coming, and they are going to disappear, hopefully. And I'm in the Atlanta airport with James Cosmo, and he's got to have one of the best faces of any human in the world. And he and I got on, man. We phone each other every week. Anyway, we get to the where you go through the, I can't think of the word, all the searching you for guns. Security. So because I've got a sense of humour, I saw this white guard, and the white guards in Atlanta, which is mainly black, they're like Nazis. They're so cruel. And anyway, I walked up to him and he said, get your hands up. And I felt like saying, say please, you piece of trash. Because they get very aggressive. You know, you've seen these people. Anyway, James has already gone through, and there's a whole crowd now gathered looking at James because he's in Game of Thrones. And they see him looking at me, and they think, well, he's got to be someone, otherwise James Cosmo wouldn't be looking at him. So suddenly a huge Doctor Who contingent, about 300 bleeding people who've been to the show, are now watching me being searched. Well, guess what? I'm standing there minding my own business like you do. He said, put your hands up. I put my hands up, and bloody jeans fell down right my ankles. Now, the funny thing about that is, James Cosmo's laugh brought the airport to a standstill. And I looked at the guard and said, do you realise you've just ruined my career? He nearly arrested me for talking to him. He said, what did you say? And I suddenly thought, my God, John, keep your big mouth shut. Anyway, that's enough of that story. Next question, please.
Next question. You talked about Pertwee, you talked about Delgado. I mean, there is a lot of talk about the unit family. It's become almost a bit of a cliche. But I know that there was a tight-knit group back in the early 70s
Yes.
when you were doing those stories. Was there one person in particular? Or was it just a general thing? Was there one in particular that you really bonded with, perhaps more than anyone else?
I mean, I'll tell you the truth if you'd like it. I can't bear bullshit. I can't bear actors that say nothing, that stuff that isn't true. And now I'm at this age, I don't really give a shit, because what else do they do to me? When Pat Troughton left, I like Pat. I played golf with Pat twice a week in the Actors Golf Club, and I beat him because I was a four-handicap. Anyway, the producer Barry Letts came in one day and said, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the new Doctor. Now, when you're in a show like Doctor Who, every morning I woke up, my heart would beat out of my chest. I would get the bus, because I earned 80 quid a week. I'll tell you what I earned as an actor. I was a household name across the world. I was taking home £80 a week. And then when I got up to Regimental Sergeant Benton, I got £100 a week. I won't tell you what the Doctor earned, but you would be utterly surprised. It's not the £1.5 million they get now. I was married with 2 kids, smoked 10 cigarettes a day, and I was on 80 quid a week. It was 1973. What was the question?
was there one?
Oh, yeah. So we used to rehearse in church halls because the BBC didn't have the rehearsal rooms, which they now have in Acton, huge building. The producer came in when Pat Troughton had gone. Now, do remember, Doctor Who was going to disappear from existence. Pat's Doctor Who had gone downhill so badly, no one was watching. The viewing figures had plummeted to nothing. Doctor Who was on its way out. The only way they could get it to stay in is they had to find a magnetic personality, someone who could grab everybody by their heart, their soul, and their conscience, and make a difference. And John Pertwee was that man. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. He walked into that rehearsal room, and within a second, excuse me, in a second I knew everything would change. He had heart and humour and everything you needed when you were a young, nervous actor. Anyway, the long and short of it is he walked in and he liked me straight away. I think it's because I was tall and I dressed smartly. He loved people that dressed smartly. And I like doing it because in all fairness, why not if you got a chance, you know, even though it's only 12 quid. It looks good. It looks like 24 quid, doesn't it? Yeah. So suddenly what happened is John and I became, like, if you like, the mano on mano. We loved each other very much. And he knew my dad had beaten me about. And he hated my father for punishing me so hard, given that I didn't do anything. And he hated my father because he almost broke me again. So then suddenly I thought, my God, John Pertwee's my friend. And I went home and I remember thinking, this is incredible. And then, of course, Katie Manning got the leading lady, and John and her got on so well. It was almost like a marriage, because you act together all day. But what most people don't know is that when John did his cabarets and opened all his supermarkets every evening and every weekend, guess who he chose to drive with him and be with him all that time? Me. So I ended up learning comedy from John, driving his expensive sports car. And I've just seen in an article last year that he let me drive his sports car. No other human being touched it, even his son, but he did it to give me confidence. And that's what John Pertwee was all about. So suddenly we've got Katie Manning, John Pertwee, and John Levene. Now Nick Courtney, in all fairness, Nick was a drinker, and he was forever in the pub. He was never with us, apart from in the studio. But we loved him because his performance was bloody amazing. I don't think anyone else could have played the Brigadier like that. Richard Franklin was upper class. I was absolutely working class. You know, we were so poor, I thought knives and forks were jewellery. That's how poor we were. So anyway, suddenly this family formed, and we suddenly noticed the viewing figures went up. And then in the third week that my face appeared on television, I've never told anybody this before, maybe the day's a day. I've never had confidence. I do now, because I don't give a shit anymore, and if you can't give a shit at 75, then what's the bleeding point? In those days, I worried about everything. I never read the newspapers, because newspapers lie, and they don't tell very good jokes. And then one day, I got a fan letter, and the head of BBC came to the studio, not to see John Pertwee or Roger Delgado or Katie Manning, me. And he said, Mr. Levene, you've just had the biggest fan letter of any actor in the history of the BBC, apart from a couple of other big stars. 690 women in a linen factory in Lancashire all fell in love with me simultaneously, and they wanted me to be engaged, and it was the most flattering thing. And that's when I started to think, well, maybe I'm not so stupid as my father told me I was, and maybe I'm not ugly, and maybe I do have a talent inside me. And that's what happened. So really, John and Roger brought me alive. Doctor Who gave me the means to do it. And when you think I had no acting training, no drama school, no theatre, no voiceovers, I was a menswear salesman in Regent Street in London. And I'm sure you've all heard the story. A huge Hollywood movie star came into my shop. It wasn't my shop. Telly Savalas, who played Kojak. You young people won't have a clue. And he was also in my second favourite war movie, The Dirty Dozen. Anyway, he came in. I sold him 3 cashmere pullovers and a Burberry raincoat. And he said, "You've got a good face, young man. You've ever thought of being an actor?" My God, with my shyness and my fear of life, the last thing I would have thought of was being an actor. Well, suddenly I became an actor. I was a walk-on, and the first job I got was as a Cyberman in Doctor Who. And my agent phoned me up and said, "Have you ever been a Cyberman?" I thought, what the hell is a Cyberman? And how the hell could I have been one before? Anyway, I got the part, and basically the rest is history. I worked as hard as I could. I sweated. I got there early. For all you young people, punctuality next to talent is the only way you're ever going to survive in life. If you're late once, they don't want to use you again, especially in professional businesses. So I've always been a good lad. I've never put anyone else down. I've never criticized anyone else because, you know, who are we to do so? I remember when I first met my agent, I said, "I'm John Levene, I'm an actor." He said, "Don't worry, John, your secret's safe with me." I thought, well, that's not a very good start. But that was it then, and as I said, I moved to Hollywood, and Hollywood was tough, cruel, and quite blinding. I made several movies, nearly made it. Got a phone call once in Hollywood, and I had to go to Beverly Hills 4 days running. And they said, "Mr. Levene, we're looking for a 68-year-old Englishman with blue eyes, a deep voice, and an un-Hollywood nose." One of the things I lost a lot of work in Hollywood was, I've got the big ugly English nose. Head on, it doesn't notice too badly. But every time I went, because I was put up for Titanic, I was put up for everything. Everybody in Hollywood put up for every bloody thing. And I went in, and the minute I walked in, oh, English meat, they love us over there, and so they damn well should. We gave them everything. You know, they can't even speak our language, for God's sake. Well, you know, we are separated by a common language. They say rag, we say root. They say aluminum, we say aluminium. They say herbs, and we say herbs. And the reason we say herbs is because there's a bloody H in it. You know. So anyway, that was it. So I ended up, oh, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say. Yeah.
I have one more question,
Oh, right.
and then we can open up to the floor. Okay, just very briefly, in say, I don't know, 10 words. You have a time machine,
Yes.
okay, and you go back to 1968 and the set of The Invasion, where you were hanging about there.
Right.
And you can give your younger self one piece of advice.
God, where did you get these questions? I've never been asked any of these.
I've Googled them.
Oh, did you? Right.
What do you tell yourself?
Well, the perfect advice I would give me is to not be a pillock and realise I wasn't as stupid as everybody told me I was. You tell a child they're stupid, they'll end up stupid. That's why parents are so dangerous. It's your mum and dad that are killing you. Not all of you, not all of you. You know.
Cool. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes for questions from the audience. So,
the lady that was right here straight away.
Right over the front. Okay, so I was coming over to prime myself by the box of text, but I'll go straight for
She has
questions.
a fez on a scarf as
What's the
well.
strangest question you've ever been asked by a fan?
I beg your pardon.
It was, what was the strangest question you've ever been asked by a fan?
I think that one. No. Oh, look, I mean, to be honest with you, it's like people say, what was the funniest moment? Do you know, to be honest with you, there were so many. Right, let me give you a quick example. I keep on about John Pertwee because, in all fairness, he was my life. I mean, if I'd been gay, I'd have wanted to marry him. But the fact that he was like my father, and he took me on as a son. Now, remember, he didn't get on with his son either. Now, just to let you know, I've told the people at the back, but guess who I had a phone call from 3 days ago from New York City? Sean Pertwee, from the set of Gotham. And the reason is very simple. My website is run by a man who lives just near Elvis Presley's home in Nashville. I'm going there in 2 months' time. I'm not an Elvis fan, but I want to see Nashville now that I've become a bit of a singer. I do one Elvis song called, I forgot what it is now. But anyway, what was the question? Oh yeah, John. When you're an actor, especially back in the day when you don't have any chance to do retakes, when an actor dries, there's only two words they say. They either say F-U-C-K or Jesus Christ. And I always personally said Jesus Christ. So you imagine you're in a studio, there's all these people watching, the time's running out, you're doing your part, and you get your lines wrong. And that moment, you hear actors talk about dying, that's when you die worse than a real death. It's a dreadful feeling. Anyway, there was one story where I only had one line in it. John Pertwee, the doctor, was in the laboratory, fiddling with something like he always did. And Benton had to walk in. And just to let you know, when you're an actor, all the sets, you stand behind the screen, and then the PA, producer's assistant, will come up and say, John, you know you're on in the next scene, and your first line is, excuse me, doctor. Now, that gives you a lot of confidence, because sometimes you forget the line. You stand there and you think, how am I going to remember everything? There's another 2 hours to go, and yet you remember it. So my line was, I had to walk in and say, excuse me, doctor, there's a call for you. And he said, who is it, Benton? And I said, I don't know, doctor. He wouldn't give his name. Well, I walked in, and this particular night, we had all the top politicians from Margaret Thatcher's people in. They have viewing booths all around the studios, and millions of people came in every week to watch us film. Are You Being Served, Softly Softly, and Doctor Who. So I was dressed as Benton, and I enjoyed wearing the uniform, although I was not a real soldier. And my line was, so I walk in, I say, excuse me, doctor, there's a call for you. He said, who is it, Benton? And I couldn't remember the line. So let's go back to the beginning. Excuse me, there's a call for you. Who is it, Benton? I said, oh, Jesus Christ. He said, put him through. And that was put down as the quickest ad-lib in the history of BBC. I mean, he did it. I said, oh, Jesus. He said, put him through. Wow, mate. So anyway, you then have to go out and do the line again. But my love, there are so many wonderful moments. Every minute of my life in Doctor Who, and now I look back now, I still can't believe. I watched The Demons the other night. I'm watching myself lately in all my movies, because you don't watch yourself when you're doing it, because you're scared that you're not going to like it and you're going to go in. But I was quite good. I wasn't a great actor and I couldn't do Shakespeare. I mean, I love Shakespeare, I have to tell you. I get his books as soon as they come out. They're fantastic. Okay, any more questions quickly, because we've only got...
Just
your job now.
Well, as it had been mentioned, Mr. Cosmo, he's got a new film coming out called Dark Signal.
Oh, thank you. That's what it was.
And so I've got a poster here that was given to me at Wales Comic Con that's signed by the director and the producer of the film.
You're kidding.
There you go, have that one.
Well, and I didn't fix that for you, that wasn't me. Okay.
That was because you mentioned James
I'm
Cosmo.
not. You
James
can't
Cosmo's
remember.
great. Okay, where are we going to go? People who haven't asked a question yet today. I don't believe you have you? No, okay.
Is there anything you wish you'd done as part of Doctor Who which you didn't get to do on the show?
Anything that I could have done in the show, you mean as a character, or?
Yeah, like a certain scene you would love to do, or a monster you'd love to interact with. Anything which could have made it better for you.
Well, again, you see, I mean, I did so many episodes. By the time you start one and finish the other, you're panicking about the one that's coming around the corner. All I know is my favourite monster was the same as John Pertwee's, the Ogron. Kind of half man and half human. Rather like my mother-in-law. Yeah, no, she's an American, and she's just had a facelift. But it's no good, it's not high enough, I can still bloody see it. No. Right, that's good, isn't it? Yeah, no, I mean, and the truth is, you know, how lucky was I to get Benton? I mean, look, you don't know when you get a part, the BBC phone you up, you go in, you stand in the studio and you do what they tell you. But I never dreamed that 55 years later I'd be standing here giving advice to young men to try and tell them to make their lives a little better. You know, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. And now one thing I have forgotten to tell you, one of my little breaks, when I was living in Putney, now remember, 80 quid a week does not a house buy. I was living in London in Putney, just 100 yards from where the boat race starts, by Putney Bridge, which is where they caught Crippen, as a matter of interest. And anyway, back in I can't remember the dates, dates bore me, but somebody moved into the whole house next door. It was a whole Victorian house, 4 floors, and you're never in a million years going to guess who it was. Now, I'm quite famous, but like, not only Doctor Who people would know me, and the movies I made in Hollywood, but people outside of Doctor Who wouldn't know who the hell I am. But we all know Brad Pitt and George Clooney because they're major movie stars. Guess who moved in next door to me, and the next morning, I used to play golf every Sunday morning, I went downstairs to get my golf clubs out, and the person who moved in next door came out of his house, came up to me and said, "You're John Levene, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Sorry, but the noise went on till 4 o'clock in the morning." They kept my wife and my 2 children at that time awake. Anyway, he came up to me and said, "I saw you on television last night. You're in Doctor Who, aren't you?" Now, remember, this is at the beginning when I wasn't confident, and I certainly wasn't the man I am now. And I realized at that time, as I was never going to be a great orator, maybe I could be now, but then I certainly would not have been, I realized that the power of oratory is everything in an actor's chest. So my decision that I made, and this answers some of your questions, I knew I was never going to be a big star, but I knew that I wanted to make a difference. So what I did, I became a face actor. There are quite a few of us about. They're the people that are smaller parts, are always in the background, but they're vital to the overall cohesion of the story. And if you notice, Benton was always there at the back. There was the Doctor, the Brigadier, and Joe. And the Doctor saying to the Brigadier, the Nestines are coming, they're going to kill them. But you notice, if you go back now and watch all my episodes, which I know you're not going to do, you'll watch me closely and you'll see that because I couldn't act in my brain, I used my face to react to what the other actors who had big words would say. So what happened is I became famous because the fans thought that I translated the story through my face movement more than anyone else. Like Nick Courtney, for example, I watched Nick. Nick never changed because he had so much dialogue. His face stayed dead straight. But Benton would go kind of, oh, you just, oh, like, oh, no. And that's how I got. So anyway, it was Tony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins had moved in next door. And he became my best mate for 2 years, but then he went and made Silence of the Lambs, and I haven't seen him since. Ladies and gentlemen, my time must be up.
I think we've got time for one more quick question, but for the lady here, you can have a Zombie Army Trilogy armband and t-shirt in the game. There we go.
He's getting more than we did. Oh, it's
Okay, so we've got time for just one more, so we're making good. Yeah, down in the middle here. Right.
sorry,
Can somebody pass the
else.
microphone?
We've had a chat.
Out of all the Doctors from Doctor Who, which are your top 3?
Oh, okay, top 3. I'm very happy to tell you. Well, obviously John, simply because he made my life and he was like my surrogate father. I thought David Tennant was bloody brilliant. I thought that man, I was in Hollywood the whole time he was on. The minute that man came on screen, I thought, there's the way to play the Doctor. And don't forget Christopher Eccleston. Don't forget Christopher Eccleston. And I'm beginning to enjoy Peter Capaldi for 2 reasons. He loves John Pertwee. Katie Manning, my darling Katie, because you know there's only 3 of us alive now from the... and you know there's a gamble, there's a bet on, they've got a book on who's going to die first. Out of
A Deadpool, no.
Richard, Kate, a Deadpool, Katie, Richard, and myself. How weird is that? Anyway, yeah. So yes, and Peter Capaldi, you know, he's playing homage because he's got the red lining to his jacket. And I've offered to be a walk-on in one of the episodes, just to be with Peter Capaldi for just 1 minute. Not that that's going to happen, but yeah, that's my order. And I'm sure there were. I mean, John Nathan Turner to me ruined Doctor Who. Most of we older actors feel that when all the middle Doctors, they didn't quite. I mean, they had Pat Troughton and then John. But listen, first of all, Doctor Who's never going to die. And I'd like to thank you from the heart of my bottom for loving it so much. And the fact that I was in it is just good luck. And I will never stop raving about it because, quite frankly, it made my life. And may I just say, on behalf of everybody, thanks for being... I've loved the way this show's been run. I've been talking to Simon and the lads. There's an atmosphere here which is so good, and there are only 2 people that do it. It's not we celebrities. We're actually just a bit of icing on the cake. It's the people that run it, organise it, and entertain you. And I think they've been bloody brilliant, and I thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Simon.
Please give it up for John Levene.